Welcome to the WTR Healthcare Happenings podcast. I'm your host, Tim Gerdeman, Vice Chair and Co-Founder and Chief Marketing Officer of Water Tower Research. In today's podcast episode, I'm being joined by Dwight Egan, CEO of Co-Diagnostics Inc., NASDAQ ticker symbol CODX. Also joining is my Water Tower Research Equity Research colleague, Robert Sassoon. Co-Diagnostics is a molecular diagnostics company headquartered in Salt Lake City. Co-Diagnostics specializes in PCR-based testing solutions powered by a patented technology which enables rapid, accurate, and cost-effective detection of infectious diseases. Dwight and Robert, good morning, and thank you for joining me today.
Good to be with you.
Good morning. Good morning, Dwight.
Dwight, many people are familiar with PCR testing from the COVID era, even if they may not understand the technology and the mechanisms of the action. Let me start by asking you to give our listeners a little history of Co-Diagnostics and a 30,000-foot overview of where the company is today.
Thank you. And it's so great to be with you. I want to tell you that we're really excited about what is happening here at Co-Diagnostics. We were a company that was founded about a dozen years ago in 2013, and we developed our technology. We obtained our proprietary patent for our co-primers. And then the pandemic hit, and we were right there ready to go. So we were the very first U.S.-based company, for example, to have a COVID test approved by the with a CE mark from the European Union, and that facilitated rapid and sort of explosive growth as we approached more than 50 different countries around the world that were using our tests for COVID. We then decided, very early in the pandemic that we wanted to kind of look around the corner and see where this was all going. Some people wondered whether it would be over by the fall of 2020, right? But it wasn't. But we embarked on the development of a very wonderful instrument and technology that we refer to as the CODX PCR Pro. We've now finished with that development, and we're in clinical trials with our flu, A, B, COVID, and RSV test. And we're very excited about launching that into the marketplace next year. So we've kind of traversed from a nascent molecular diagnostics company with a very interesting assay development co-primer technology into a full company with actually a diagnostic instrument. And that's a big milestone for us. And to be in the middle of our clinical trials, we're very excited about our future.
Thank you for that overview, Dwight. Before I turn it over to Robert to ask a few questions, could you also please provide our audience with a quick overview of your professional background?
Yes, I've spent most of my adult life in senior level management of public companies. I founded a company called Broadcast International, which was also a NASDAQ company. We were in the satellite business of placing communication systems on things like Safeway stores and Rite Aid, all kinds of different stores around the country. This goes back into the early 80s and 1980s, that is. And we then sold that company to a company called Data Broadcasting Corporation, which is the company that took CBS MarketWatch public, for example. I was a senior executive there. And we had about 27,000 investors, including banks and insurance companies that used our platform to track the market we had products like eSignal. And, there was a very successul business. We then sold that to Pearson out of London, that did the Financial Times and and they had 100 different television shows, Baywatch to The Price is Right. So that's who we sold that to. And then I did a lot of private investing and then ended up hearing a very smart scientist tell me about this new technology that he had created. I quickly saw the value proposition in that and got involved. And then we took it onto the NASDAQ in July of 2017. So I've just spent a lot of time helping to incubate companies from the ground floor and getting them into the capital markets, raised the money, and we've had a lot of fun and success along the way.
Sounds like a fun career track. With that, I'll turn it over to Robert.
Okay, thank you, Tim, and welcome, Dwight. And we really appreciate you joining us on this podcast. So
Sure.
let's dive into the value proposition of the technology, the patented co-primers multiplexing technology. So could you give us a quick overview of how it works, why it's effective, and how it helps reduce issues like primer dimers and the risk of false positives?
Yes, everybody is familiar, courtesy of the pandemic, of what happened when you had competing technologies. You had lamp technologies, isothermals, you had antigen tests and things like that. But the gold standard, which remained throughout the pandemic and still remains to this day, was the PCR test, the polymerase chain reaction test. It's a technology that garnered the Nobel Prize back in about 1984 when Dr. Kary Mullis invented it. And what we did with our co-primer technology is we enhanced it incredibly well. And we made it so that we can do multiplexing in kind of a class by ourselves. So when you see the tests that we're doing at Co-Diagnostics, it's generally not a single test. It can be, but it's more likely to be a multiplex test that tests for several different pathogens at one time. So you have one patient, one sample, one test. In 30 minutes, you have your result. Our test that's currently in clinical trial, for example, tests concurrently for flu A, flu B, COVID-19, and RSV. And it gives you all the results within 30 minutes or so on your smartphone with an in-the-cloud diagnostic algorithm sequence, and it is really a beautiful technology. So it enables us to make very complex tests. For example, we have a test that has been designed and is currently in preclinical trials in certain areas of the world that tests for human papillomavirus, but it doesn't just test for one, two, or three. It tests for 8 different targets that were all defined for us by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who helped support this test financially, like they did our tuberculosis test. And it makes it so in a 30-minute run, you can, again, with one test, one sample, one patient, in 30 minutes, you can have a diagnosis of all of those targets. It's a very remarkable sort of technology. And we do so without creating the false positives and false negatives, and as you specifically mentioned, the primer dimers. We really almost obliterate primer dimers in the normal course.
Thanks for that explanation. So what would you say are the key features of the CODX platform that differentiate from many PCR diagnostics devices that are out there as today?
Well, aside from the technology features that I just mentioned, the overall benefits of this technology. Remember, this is a little box that's about the size of a tissue box, and it uses a little cartridge and your cell phone. So what differentiates it is that it's portable, so that it's really accessible. It can get down to places where PCR has never been able to go before. It's also incredibly accurate because it is the gold standard. It is real-time PCR. So when you get through being affordable and accessible in that context, and you also have accuracy that is gold standard, that's what differentiates it. And of course, the affordability of it. This beautiful device is going to be able to go to places where traditional PCR machines just have not been able to go, because a traditional PCR device normally costs somewhere in the $10,000 to $20,000 range. This costs, say $300 to $500 at scale. So it can all of a sudden be placed, in a doctor's office. It can be placed in a pharmacy. It can be placed in every school nurse office. It can go to all these places where a traditional PCR device was too expensive to go. So we give you the same kind of quality and the same kind of accuracy that you would get with a much more expensive system, and put it on a little device that can go anywhere.
Well, that's quite an economic advantage you have there. So the company recently announced the launch of a dedicated AI business unit, though you've been leveraging AI for several years already. Could you share why now was the right time to formalize this initiative and how you're currently using AI across your operations?
Well, we like to say that, we were AI when AI wasn't cool because we've been using it for a number of years. I mean, when you're dealing in DNA and, AI is all about patterns and algorithms, and there's very few things that have as many patterns and algorithms opportunities than the 3.2 billion pairs of DNA nucleic acid that compromise the human genome. And of course, everything that we're testing, whether it's a COVID test or it's a flu test or RSV, we're looking at the genetic structure of that organism. And so to have the algorithms and things that we have available to us now to do this, and we've been building this capability over many years. So we have several pieces of AI that are already functional, and we have things that we have planned for the future. And so we're very enthused about the kind of capabilities that lie ahead in terms of detecting disease early, maybe being able to detect where breakouts are happening, and just the entire uh, environment that surrounds polymerase chain reaction with the kind of technology we use. So we're very enthused about how I'll give you a little example. We're building our tests with lyophilized uh, little beads. They're called lyo beads. That means they're freeze dried. And we do that so that we can take it into places like India and take it out into the bush, where you don't have the same kind of refrigeration and everything else that you might have in a major U.S. city. But this allows this kind of a test to go and be good at ambient temperature for a couple of years and not have to worry about the cold chain. During the pandemic, we sold millions of tests on dry ice, in order to keep the cold chain alive. That's not necessary, this type of technology, but using AI, we have a little device, and this is something we're just developing. It works, and we're really enthused about it. It's not part of our current testing development, but it is being developed, and it picks up a little lyo bead with a little vacuum uh, artifice, and then it takes a picture of the little bead. And this all happens with a robot. It's really fun to watch. It takes a picture of it, and then it compares it with 100 different good beads and a bunch of bad beads. And the algorithms detect instantaneously whether this is one that passes muster of quality control and can go into one of our consumable cups or not. And so from our production line, when we're manufacturing our tests and our consumables, to just developing the tests, AI is going to play a very important role in what we're doing.
That's fascinating. Now we've talked about the technology, so where do things stand with your current testing capabilities? You've covered some of that, and could you walk us through your strategic pipeline and what's coming next?
Yeah, we concentrate on, in our mind, what are the most important infectious diseases in the world. And so, tuberculosis, for example, is the biggest killer in terms of infectious diseases worldwide. There's about 4,300 people a day that die of tuberculosis. And the strange thing about that, Robert, is that it's a curable disease. You just have to detect it soon enough, and then you can treat it. But so we have a pipeline that focuses on these high use, high need scenarios. Of course, our upper respiratory panel that's currently in clinical trials in about 8 locations throughout the U.S. It tests concurrently for flu A, flu B, COVID, and RSV. That is obviously a very important part of the upper respiratory syndromic area, and you have to breathe to live. And so that's an important part of what we're doing. I've mentioned before the human papillomavirus test. That is the second leading cause of cancer deaths in India for women. So between that and what I've just mentioned, we have a very good looking platform portfolio that's coming out in terms of menu. And in the future, we'll be looking to add a multiplexed sexually transmitted infection disease panel. It'll include things like gonorrhea and chlamydia, trichomoniasis, and other things that again will be in one test. So you don't have to take 8 different tests or 4 different tests to get the result that you're looking for. And of course, we're looking to do a strep A. And if you really want to get it a little bit more in the future, go down 2 or 3 years. We have ambitions for personal pets, cats and dogs. And because there's a lot of people that have a pet dog or a pet cat, and they want to know whether they've got certain diseases. And this fits very, very well into that area. I don't know whether a pet owner will have our device in their home on their kitchen counter, but they certainly could if they want it. It's affordable.
That's interesting. So, Co-Diagnostics is currently transitioning from a pandemic era testing company with revenues limited to legacy PCR test sales and grants to a hardware driven international razor and blade business model. So, can you run through the key aspects of your commercialization strategy, how quickly you can meaningfully monetize your platform, and what steps remain to complete the company's business model evolution?
Well, there's a giant market. Let's start with that. Worldwide, there is just a giant diagnostics market, somewhere in the $200 billion range. Now, the molecular diagnostics is a subset of that, and clinical diagnostics is a subset of the global worldwide scenario we're talking about. But we have a large market, and it's growing rapidly as well, particularly in the molecular diagnostic space. So we have an opportunity to go to, many different countries in the world. We just announced a joint venture with in Saudi Arabia with it's called Comira, like we did 8 years ago with India with our CoSara joint venture, which we've now been in for 8 years. So I think one of the interesting things is there's plenty of market for us. And we've done a lot of internal research and a lot of field marketing research with very good companies that do that sort of thing. So we know where our targets are. We know that, for instance, the clinics, hospitals, the doctor's offices, the pharmacies, the skilled nursing facilities or kind of rest home environment, and of course the home market are places where there's a very good need for our product. And I think the important differentiation here, Robert, is that it's not so much how much market there is, it's how little of that market we have to garner in order to be very successful as a company. If we place a few thousand boxes doing, 6 to 12 tests a day, like in a pharmacy or in a skilled nursing facility or in a clinic, you get to $100 million in revenue very quickly at a very good operating margin. So it's not that it's just a big market. We don't have to have very much of it to be enormously successful.
Right. I think you sort of you talked about the market opportunity. I mean, in total, how much of that market do you think you can capture over the years?
Well, our ambitions currently, are to get, maybe up to the first 10,000 or so instruments placed, and then the company is really sailing. And I think the sky's the limit because of its affordability and its accessibility, because it's so easy to use. I think we're going to see it proliferate. And you just have to decide, whether we're going to make PCR the gold standard, the standard for everybody. That's our goal. That's where we're heading out. And so whether it's in India or Saudi Arabia or in the United States, we're developing a potent menu that will, I think, be very successful in getting traction.
Well, thank you, Dwight. That's really been very informational and very useful to get a better understanding of Co-Diagnostics and its business development. So back to Tim.
Well, thanks for joining me today, Dwight and Robert. Best wishes as we wind down the year and the holiday season. And particularly best wishes to you, Dwight, as you start the rollout process. Sounds like a really exciting business. And my brain's kind of spinning thinking about the total addressable market globally is massive. So you should have a lot of fun out there.
We're excited about it and really looking forward to 2026. I think this is going to be a great year for us.
Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, as well as visiting www.watertowerresearch.com to stay up to speed on the company's small cap written research reports, podcasts, fireside chats, industry-specific symposiums, and conference schedules. We will see you next time for another edition of the WTR Healthcare Happenings podcast. Finally, a special thanks to the producer and editor of the podcast, Krista Fitzpatrick.